need to maximize the number of individuals who have control over the systems which are building. So as more people are receiving control and power, this also means that people have to take responsibility for their actions. And they require the ability and knowledge to make the right decisions for status to succeed. Well, core contributors or status are empowered by receiving extensive liberty to organize their own targets and work. In fact, they're empowered to the point that are becoming true entrepreneurs. In return, it is expected and required that core contributors, as their name...
Sorry, yes, son.
No worries. Core contributors are required, as their name implies it, that they contribute to the core of status and add value to the project. So that really, status owes its crowd sale participants that the best use is made of the crowd sale proceeds. So we want to build fantastic applications, deliver on the status white paper. So shall I continue in Spanish? Therefore, a key value of the status is resourcefulness. With that, it's our obligation to fight inefficiencies within the organization. Status is currently actually burning the equivalent of about $1 million per month for its operations. To ensure that these funds are being appropriately deployed, transparency is essential. This means that we have to be frank about our shortcomings. Now, to live up to the values of resourcefulness and transparency, we will run a review process of core contributor performance within the next few weeks. And based on the review process, job engagements and compensation will be punctually adjusted. This review process, unfortunately, cannot be fully decentralized at this stage, but we seek to include elements of decentralization as part of that process. The target is that status is appropriately rewarding great performance. These all might sound a bit abstract, but there is a lot which you can do at this stage. With 100 core contributors at status, it is natural that not everybody can live up to his best at all times. Do you sometimes feel that you have difficulties to cope with the freedom to self-organize the workday, or do you require more instructions and guidance to be effective and successful? Then you can address this by speaking up and ask for feedback. Your colleagues and swarm leads should happily support you to improve to the point where you can perform best. So you're also welcome to ping me if you need to help improve any matters, or if you have any suggestions on how status can operate more resourceful. Thank you very much.
Cool. I'll jump into the content channel report. So we're actually up on all the metrics from the previous fortnight, which is awesome. We saw, our average engagements and impressions increase, which is awesome. Our average mentions also increased. That actually came off the back of an article going out saying that we were in the top 6 most contributed developer work, and that kind of got shared out quite a bit. In terms of top performing content, we obviously had our Embark 3.2 launch, which was our highest performing piece of content. We had the update on the status Hardwallet, and then we obviously had that other piece announcing more hackathon attendees for CryptoLife. So yeah, all that performed quite well. On to the next slide. An update from last Townhall, the developer Twitter channel. There's a Discuss article up right now, some considerations around it. We're actually trying to explore how we can get as many people involved with the channel as possible. So definitely jump into that channel. We're looking to launch it kind of the next week or two, but we just want to kick things off with a few team members who can help contribute some content. So jump into the Discuss article, reach out to us, anyone on the marketing team, and we can kick things off there. Done.
Cool. So as Rajani and Andy both mentioned, the hackathon is coming up. It's in almost 3 weeks now, which is wild. So you can see in this doc a list of all the activities that we've planned, and there's a lot. It's a lot of really, really cool things presented by the status team, by sponsors, by anyone and everyone. So jump in there and you can check out what's going to go on. An agenda, we're still looking for status team members to propose workshops. Right now, I think Julian and Extensions is the only one. So if you do have a workshop, a technical workshop, and you want hackers to work on some of your projects or your repos, please let us know. I think you guys have all seen it, but there's a floor plan for anyone who hasn't. You can see where the various activities will be. And then as Rajani mentioned as well, we've kind of starting to outline roles and responsibilities from the team. This is definitely a team effort. Everyone's been super helpful, and we're going to need that to carry throughout the event. So just check that out, see where you can fit in. And if there's anything specific you do want to do, drop it in the doc or ping me, and we can make that happen. But overall, things are moving along really, really well, and I'm personally very excited to see everyone out there. So yeah, can't wait.
All right. Hello, everyone. So just 3 small things. Oh, I think the resolution is a bit off. The bottom of the screen is okay, whatever. So just 3 small things. So the first one is sort of skin in the game 4, about going cold turkey on Slack. So I deactivated my Slack last week, and Jared and Ned did as well. And I mean, we've been talking about dog fooding and champagne drinking and so on for a long time. And now we have seen all this amazing progress with desktop and so on, and it's actually usable. So please join me and Jared and Ned in being an intolerant minority, and sort of let's just get off this thing already and start to use status, because that's kind of what we're here for. And it's not so bad. It's actually really nice. So it's still a bit quirky. Some education's on, but lots of people are working on it. And the more people use it, the more sort of intimately aware we become of these problems. So don't be afraid. Just click that deactivate button and let's go on status. Second small thing, so we're going to have a principles marathon. So that's going to be Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday this week and next week. We're going to do a deep dive and sort of have a seminar thing for each principle. And the idea is that we sort of we talk about these things together, and we sort of start to have a more high resolution understanding and sort of reasoning about these principles and applying them to sort of what we're working on. And it's really useful as a kind of decentralized tool for decision making, because we're all on the same page on what we're doing and why things are important and how we should think about these things. Then there's no need for some central source of control. So it's kind of the cultural thing, the DNA that sort of ties us together. So yeah, we are self-organizing in status principles in status. If you want to join us, sort of welcome to help out with sort of organizing it. And also if you have some small speech you want to give and so on. And the idea is also that this is going to give us sort of prime our discussions in Prague. So we sort of start to think about these things already and can talk about things in a more sort of principled and inspiring way, hopefully, at Prague. And also upgrade our wall of shame with sort of more new granular items and so on, how we're falling short of our principles. And finally, DAO now. So we might not be a fully decentralized autonomous organization right now, but we are sort of on our way to it. And there's things you can do today already. That's also profitable for you as an individual. So yeah, I suggest you go read the post if you haven't, and you can sort of be a part of this alternative reality. And yeah, let's sort of move into this new exciting world where this permissionless sort of participation and compensation is not sort of centralized in any form. And kudos to let's see, Andy, Ned, Michael, Carl, and maybe I forgot someone else. Barry as well, for sort of joining me in this. And yeah, please have a look. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to talk to me and anyone else who's participating in this. And that's all for me. Thank you.
Yeah, well, this is Gilou speaking. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, no, so I think we lost Andy. So I'm gonna talk here about the Hardwallet Lite and describe where we're at with this project. Okay, so what is this and why we're doing it? It's a contactless credit card size hard wallet. It works with Android phones, and it comes to us at a really low cost, roughly less than $4. And why we're doing that? First, obviously, we want to bring more security to our users. The card is here to sign transactions, and it isolates the private keys in an offline place. But also, and we'll show you in a quick demo in a minute, we are doing this to bring more convenience to our users. For instance, it makes it easy to download the status app, to launch it, and sign in. Probably the two main open points about this product and project as a whole are, first, how are we going to distribute it? Will we sell it? Will we offer it? Where? How? And actually, it's pretty exciting if you think about it, because this little card can also be seen as a powerful engagement tool. It's cheap. It might be bundled with some tokens preloaded on it. And for some part of our users, it can really be seen as a trigger to get into the crypto world through status. And another thing we need to decide is, do we want it to work with desktop? Because it does affect the card that we are sourcing today. Next slide, please. So where we're at with the user experience. Actually, the team is putting a lot of effort there currently. We believe it's critical, first, because it's a complex product. It needs to be explained to users. If we don't do that well, we're going to lose them. And second, the UI for this product is pretty much a functional spec. So defining that quite precisely is very helpful for the development team and the test team. So we did put up a first version of the UI, and we ran user testing sessions last week. So thanks, Patrick. What did we learn? First, and that's good news, there's no critical usability issues with this UI. However, we noticed that we need more text, more content on each screen to describe what's going on at each step. I'm thinking especially at the initialization procedure. And we also need to work more on the content, since some users don't get what the product is for. What is it? Is it a credit card? Is it a security card? We need to explain that more in our pitch, on the packaging, maybe on our website, on the app itself. This week, we're going to iterate on the UI definition. We're going to go in the detail of all the subcases, and there are a lot, actually. And what's happening here is, what do we do now? Do we implement this new UI, or do we go through another round of user session first? And we're going to discuss that with the team tomorrow, actually. The other open thing is the naming of the product. We need to define that simply because it impacts the UI, and it's also on the packaging, and we are defining the packaging now. Next slide, please. As for the development, we have a couple of new things on the card itself. We can now clean secrets from the card with a command. We have refined how the app can identify which state the card is in. And we have something to show you today. So for a totally new status user, we thought it would be cool that when he gets his card in his hands for the first time, he just needs to tap the card on the phone to open status download page on the Play Store. So it's something that we did implement. It's quite convenient and a straightforward way to get started with status, actually. So yeah, if you can just replay the link on top, please, Andy. It's very quick. You see, we tap the card, and then we're prompted with the Play Store app page. So very convenient, card out of the box. I tap it on my phone, and I can download the status app. And then later on, when the user is set up with status, the user can tap the card on the phone, and it launches status on the sign-in page. So if you can play, yes, the one on the bottom, you see we tap the card, status app is already here. So it just prompts the sign-in page of the status app. So it's quite neat. It's implemented, it's running on a separate Java applet on the card. We could ask our factory to load this in the card before shipping. But there's an open point, though, we're discussing these days. We want to make sure that this tapping experience does not raise any security concern, because a fake status card could easily link to the download of a fake status client and then phish some secrets. So we need to weigh in the security exposure towards the convenience we create here. For the rest, in Go, the card initialization is done. There's a pull request that has been submitted in status Go. We have an Android test app. This app goes through all the card commands. We've used it to test the cards. We've actually identified some issues with some cards with this. And next step is to implement some commands in status Go to interact with the applet directly from status Go. And as per the UI, we have started the screen implementation already. And there's now significant work to implement the full UI and logic between the screens. Next, please. Yeah, as per the sourcing of these cards, we have found a good card. It's from NXP. It's fast. It's got the crypto functions we were aiming to find. And there are several factories that can provide it to us. We are at the final evaluation phase with 2 European factories, one in France, one in Austria. They can both supply this card. And we are quite happily surprised with the quality of the offers. These factories are flexible. They're cost effective. We consider we could get the card for less than €4 a piece from these factories. We could gain a little bit if we sourced in China, but we probably get less support, less security, and not such a good relationship. So we are overall quite in favor to go the European route for the supply of these cards. What's next? We have to formally choose the factory, place the PO, finalize the packaging with the factory. This first PO will be used to organize a beta version of the full product integration with our users. One open point which is important is, do we want this card to work with desktop? In any case, the card we're going to buy is going to be contactless so that it works with Android. We need to define if we want the card to have also contacts, like a Visa card, to actually make it work with desktop. So that's 50 cents more expensive per card. So that's not nothing. And in this case, we would also need to source a USB to card reader, which is probably going to cost between $3 to $5. So this decision needs to be taken. Do we want this card to be used with desktop? Next slide, please. So we have a product. We know how much it's going to cost to us. We're going to need to have discussions now about how we're going to get this product in the hands of our users, simply. So I'm going to create a discuss post about this, and we'd love to hear your inputs about this. There are a lot of things to discuss, actually. Are we going to sell that in fiat? Are we going to sell that in crypto? For how much? Do we want to bundle it with some crypto, which is a nice idea? Just imagine the case we sell that for, let's say, $20 in a store or online with $20 of tokens inside. It could be a great engagement tool to get new users to status, especially users who don't want to go through exchanges and still want to discover the world of decentralized services and cryptos. Or on the contrary, we could also decide we don't want to sell it. We just want to offer it to some category of our users. So these are things to decide. Then we need to decide where we sell it or offer it, through our website, through the app, through brick and mortar, where geographically, and how we're going to promote this. Putting up a marketing pitch, marketing plan, going through some business development efforts. There are several partnerships we could build with this product. And for instance, we know that some service providers, like operators, have already contacted us for this product. So there's also business development effort to start on this product. So that's it for my presentation. Do you have any questions about that?
So, I mean, I'm sorry that I was muted in the introduction there. I think that this is one of the more exciting projects that's been going on in Status over the last few months. And personally, I look forward to that discuss post coming, because I do agree that there's a lot to discuss here and a lot of different ways that we could handle this, particularly when viewed through the lens of a good engagement tool. So I think, huge work, huge kudos to you and to Michele and Andrea for the work that you guys have done on this, because it's really awesome to see the project advancing.
Yeah, thanks.
If there's no questions from anyone on the call, we'll gather them, and I'm sure that you'll get asked a lot in that discuss post, Guy-Louis, and we'll move on to our next section, which is the core wallet updates, and this will come from Goran.
Hi everyone. Next slide, please. Now, to any of you who followed the previous town halls, you probably remember my constantly same update. We keep bug fixing and we keep validating the UX. So we now have a recap, sort of a retrospective of all of those bug fixes over the last couple of months. So to first give you some context, we started the wallet improvements form sometime in April with the initial goal to fully support ERC20 tokens in wallet. Essentially, we wanted to be able to store, send, and receive, first of all, SNT, but also other ERC20 tokens. Now, we eventually expanded the scope of that swarm into a fully fledged product team, wallet team, with the intention to improve the user experience of wallet, because we saw a lot of users were struggling with wallet. It was confusing. It was also buggy. It was also a very shocking first experience with Ethereum world for a lot of them. So we wanted to fix that, and we needed to fix the UX to improve it greatly, and we also needed to fix any bugs in order to safely and responsibly use wallet on the network. So essentially what we did there is we created a 2-track team. The UX track was tasked with finding the best possible user experience any user could have with our wallet. And in order to do that, they did a lot of research, prototypes, designs, and a lot of validation and UX testing with actual users. So that was one track. And in parallel, we did also a lot of bug fixing in order to prepare a solid base, a solid current implementation of wallet, so that we would be able to safely apply all of those valuable UX insights on top of a product that works at all. Now, I'll tell you some anecdotes and examples from the bug fixing. Next slide, thank you. Now, we have some obligatory figures there. We've closed a total of 184 issues, and of those 126, so practically nearly all of them, were bugs. And realistically, even some of the non-bug issues were somehow related to bugs, in the sense that they introduced features which made some bugs obsolete. So yes, and all of that happened over the course of 13 releases, and of those 13, too many of releases were held and postponed due to specifically wallet bug fixes, because we found those bugs important, or rather dangerous. So we wanted to fix them, all of them, as early as possible. Now, the general cycle, the general way we did the bug fixing was we would first start with bug detection or reproduction, or we would need to figure out what is wrong. Then we would need to triage aggressively those bugs, because if you have 100 bugs, not all of them are equally important. For example, a typo in a label isn't as important as a bug that could, hopefully not, but possibly cause a money loss for the user. So we needed to prioritize them properly. And then we would fix the immediate bug, but also we would look back and try to figure out if there's any general solution to a type of or a class of bugs. So is there any like permanent way to fix any of those bugs? Because had we not done that, we would have been stuck in an endless vicious cycle of bug fixing, where new fixes create other bugs and so on. So basically, that's more or less how we broke away from endless vicious cycle by taking a step back and trying to see the bigger picture. Now, the big picture showed us that there was a total of 3 most vicious hotspots where bugs were likely to happen. The first hotspot was practically the fact that we switched from Ropsten to mainnet, experimentally at first, and then openly with a warning, without a warning, and so on. So practically, just because something works well in Ropsten doesn't mean that it would work well on mainnet. Some things on mainnet were different. Transaction times were longer, so we needed more spinners. The money value was real, so it was more important to put the fiat value of a transaction, because on Ropsten the transaction effectively has no consequences. On mainnet, it's actual value that you're sending or receiving. So all of those things made real difference. And the other hotspot was the simple fact that we had not 1 but 3 different ways to send a transaction in status: through chat, directly through wallet, and through an app. So those 3 ways used different code, so that was problematic. At best, things would be slightly inconsistent. At worst, we would have some bug lurking in a not very often visited piece of code, so we had to fix that. And finally, our workflow internally to send transaction was a 2-step operation. We would first create a transaction, and then in a separate non-atomic step, we would send it. So that was problematic. Some users would interrupt the flow accidentally, and that led to awkward results. So we had to fix that as well. Big kudos to Andrei, Sebastian, and Jan, who made very important refactors that made permanent fixes possible. So next slide, please. Now, I don't do whistling, so you'll have to imagine Ennio Morricone soundtrack yourselves. We had good stuff in our fixes, we had the bad stuff, and we had to have the ugly ones. So the good stuff is that we obviously added full support to tokens with a unified flow of transactions, and so we can send all those pretty tokens with the pretty icons through chat, wallet, and we can exchange them through dApps. That's the good, nice stuff. The bad stuff was that some of the bugs we triaged and luckily detected and fixed very early in the process. Some of the bugs were actually quite dangerous and could have led to money loss, but we caught them and found and instituted process steps to detect other similar bugs in the future before they are even merged. So one of those was the infamous decimals bug, which incorrectly used the decimal setting for some tokens. So for example, some tokens have up to 18 decimals, others have up to 6. If that setting is incorrect, you can end up sending orders of magnitude more than you wanted, assuming you have that balance. But you know, it's really dangerous, and that was the really bad stuff that we fixed and found a permanent way to never be able to even have that kind of a bug in our code base. And there was also the ugly stuff, like weird, ugly error messages. Now, we had quite a few of those in our bug fixing effort, and nearly all of them were actually completely harmless, other than the fact that they would pretty much freak out any user who saw it. So in order to increase the confidence in our app and simply not to have any ugly error messages, we removed and fixed and restyled a lot of those. So that was the ugly. And now, next step, please. That was all for the bug fixing. We also did a lot of redesign. So I mentioned that we had a 2-track team, while the development, myself and anyone else who jumped in to fix the bugs. While we did the bug fixing, our UX/design team did a lot of redesign, and you can see a sample of an unimplemented wallet screens in this slide. So, for example, and you could pick literally any element, and there would be a story of exactly why it's selected to be, why it was chosen to be exactly like that. So, for example, there's a set maximum button because it's actually in the current implementation really difficult to send all your Ether. You'd have to calculate the gas cost yourself. So there's also network fee, because we had questions, for example, what is the transaction fee? Who gets that? Some users thought that that's status taking its cut, which is obviously not true. You know, it's cost absorbed by the network. So the new designs answer all of those questions. Some of them in copies, some of them in the layout, and some of them by educating users somehow. So next slide, please. The top UX question, actually the most difficult one, was the infamous signing phrase. Those 3 mysterious words that appear when you try to sign the transaction. Basically, users simply didn't get that because it's not widespread. No other apps make them use that, and it's something they are not accustomed to. So people expect to have to prove their own identity to the app. People don't expect that the app will try to prove its identity to the user. So this has been probably the single most difficult challenge we faced with the UX designs, but obviously we have excellent UX experts, so they came up with a number of solutions there. One of them was to use emojis, which obviously leads to other questions. The other one is, you can see the copies are different, like you see the before and after there. So the next slide, please. You can actually, on the next slide, you can see the process of design. So we start with the current state, it gets tested, we get some feedback, we get new state, it gets tested again based on other feedback, and eventually, now that we have a mostly stable wallet code base, we'll hopefully get to implement this and have it widely available to all the users and ourselves, because we are also the users. So, and to close this slide, we have one additional comment here by Hester, that security features need proper process of validation, because we really need to do them right. If we don't do them right, it's going to end up on the wall of shame, second version, because half-done security is actually probably worse than undone security, because it sets false expectations. We really need to do any security-facing, security-relevant feature. We need to do it right. So that was it from Wallet this time. If you have any questions, please shoot.
Yeah, Goran, when will the new version of IKEA be tested? Is that slated for sometime soon?
Yeah, I think it's probably this week. I'll need to check the calendar, but yeah, I think it's something like that. Yeah, we can check it with the UX guys later.
And can you give me a brief rundown in like a minute of what the debate has been like around implementing these emojis, and some of like the technical considerations that there are for those who might not be aware?
Yeah, okay, I'll give you a handful. For example, if you have a signing phrase, you need to memorize it, or we call it Phishing Guard, or so the user needs to memorize it. If when we had 3 words, those were ASCII words, it was easy to write them down on a piece of paper. Now it's really not as easy to write down emojis. That's, for example, one challenge we have currently. You can't easily write down the eye rolling emoji over there. You could probably draw the rocket. You could maybe draw the donut, but the eye rolling emoji is a bit more tricky. So that's one of the, I'm not sure how technical It is, but it's definitely a challenge. So another challenge was that we needed to filter the list of acceptable emojis because some of them are very similar. So it's really not helpful if you have 3 slightly different smileys in your signing phrase. So cool. that's another consideration. So I hope that this answers you. You won't really see too many technical challenges. Technically, all of this is really simple to implement. It's the social engineering and the social user-facing side here that's tricky.
Yeah, that's a really, really interesting point. And it's something I think that we could definitely dive into further at CryptoLife, is this intersection between technology and the social implications that it has, which becomes so much more obvious when you do work like this. So I think it's really interesting. I'm looking forward to the results of the next user tests on this.
Yeah, and we to give you some controversy, we had a small debate of whether or not we should include the poop emoji. So
where did we land on that?
I'm not sure, actually. It's still ongoing. It's definitely memorable. It's memorable, all right. But some people might not like it, but then again, some people might like it. Who am I to judge? So, there's that.
Gives more meaning to the word shitcoin than anything else, I think.
Precisely.
All right. Thank you so much for the updates on Wallet there, Goran. It's really great to see the iterations that you guys have gone through and to get some, real insight and transparency into the process of how swarms have evolved into teams and what the work has been like. So congrats on all of this.
Cheers.
That moves us swiftly into P2P with Adam.
Hello, everyone. Let's start this. So first of all, I wanted to talk a little bit about code organization. So that was something that we needed to do in order to move forward with some of our initiatives. So the first thing that we did was some changes to status go repository. So before the changes to install dependencies and generally use status go, you needed to install dependencies and then patch some dependencies like Go Ethereum, where we had some changes that were implemented as patches. That was very not cool when you wanted to use status go as a library and, for example, write some bots that do something and send some messages to public chats or calculate some values or collect analytics data. So that was very, very hard to do, and you pretty much needed to pour the patches or just put everything into status go. So what we did recently was that we removed that dependency and pretty much made status go working as a regular library. Any library, it basically works like any library that you would use in a Go project. So that allows us to do stuff like the status dbots, where we were just one bot for now, but it's very useful for us to see how many people moves to public channels on status. So that's something that we use to measure that. The other thing that we started doing recently was to publish releases on GitHub with some small information, like what has changed between versions, and also add artifacts so they are not longer somewhere hidden behind a very strange URL on Artifactory, but they are just put in GitHub releases. And we want to follow up on that because it worked pretty well so far to make this process automated. So hopefully we'll start working on this week. And as I mentioned about Go Ethereum, right now we are having our fork of Go Ethereum that is maintained. We pull all changes from the upstream, but we also have some changes from our side, and we just put them on top of the Go Ethereum version, and no longer need to do any patches that need to be applied to status go. So that's like more open source way of doing things and more a way of decoupling those two projects. So there are still dependencies, but we are using just open source tools to handle that. And the final part is Whisper. We decided to fork it to a separate repository because we wanted to speed up development and experiments. It does not mean that we are going to work on any different version of Whisper or anything like that. we are gonna stay compatible on the protocol level, but yeah, we just needed this to implement some new things and just iterate faster, because otherwise we would end up with patches or with changing the branches and dependencies in Go Ethereum. So that's much easier for us, and also much easier to see what changes to Whisper we've done. So yeah. Next slide, please. Oh, thank you. So the another effort that's been for quite some time, but it's very close to the end, is rate limiting in Whisper. This is additional spam protection layer on top of Whisper after proof of work and Bloom filters. And it's the goal is to allow you to blacklist some peers that produce unexpected amount of traffic, or unsubscribe from topics that you don't want to subscribe anymore because they consume too much traffic. I know you're abroad and you want to reduce that, so it should be possible as you as a client could do that. And we believe that that might be very useful options, especially for people who follow a lot of public chats where there's can be like significant amount of messages coming on and on. So so yeah, this thing should actually allow you to do that. For now, what we have done is the first pull request with the implementation. This is after merge, it's going to be available in Status Go, and later we'll try to integrate it with the UI and figure out how we can do that and make it good from the UI and UX perspective. Yep, and next slide, please. And this is another different effort. It's cluster single point of failure. So pretty much this is one of our OKRs to reduce items on our wall of shame, and cluster as being a single point of failure is a huge topic here. So this is kind of continuous effort to solve this problem. We want to achieve that even when our cluster is down or it's unavailable from some areas of the world, you still can talk to your peers through status. Whether you use a custom boot nodes, custom static nodes, custom mail servers, but it still should be possible to use status and not just see like it's down or it can connect to anyone. So we want to fight with and just reduce this cluster being single point of failure. So far what we did, we are right now kind of focusing on the lowest hanging fruit. So for example, documentation. We need more people, and we need also people to be able to run status nodes easily whenever they want and however they want. So we started with documentation. We also collected issues and fixed some of them, how to run custom nodes, especially custom Whisper nodes, mail servers, boot nodes on Status Mobile. It's coming to Status Desktop probably. Just Status Desktop has not all the features that Status Mobile has in this matter. And if you want to track all issues, there's a link. So oh, and what's coming? So what's coming is the integration with dApp node. This is a really cool project where you can use to run not only status node, but various nodes that you could use to build your dApps or interact with the network. And it's very cool from the documentation perspective and from the idea where you just run it separate from anything else in a Docker containers, and also you can install your own packages. So we want, thanks to Eduardo and Jordi from the team, we are trying to integrate status node into the app node. So you would just click one button and pretty much install status node on your server or your local computer very easily. So so that's the effort. And like the vision that we have behind this is that at some point we hope that there's gonna be a lot of instances of Status Desktop running around the world. And actually our cluster would be reduced to just some boot nodes to have like a single point of entry and maybe mail servers. But we, for example, would like to get rid of Whisper nodes, but because they are simply not necessary if we would have like a lot of Status Desktop client running around the world. So hopefully we'll get to this point and yeah, and slowly reduce, like remove this thing. Yep, and next slide, please. This is new peers discovery protocols. It's just a summary what we have done in the previous months. So implementation is ready. Here's the link if you're interested. Rendezvous nodes has been deployed to the production cluster, and they're working on production on the latest releases of Status Desktop and Status Mobile. Recently, we created also a special discovery proxy that advertises LES servers in Rendezvous network, which makes finding less servers in a very short time, like a few seconds. When you join and when you try to find these LES servers with Discovery version 5, it can take like minutes or even more to find LES servers. And thanks to caching and some proxying with Rendezvous, we can get these numbers to just like seconds. This is still kind of experiment, but it's been working pretty well. It's not integrated with the Status Mobile yet. What's left here is to implement some smart way of switching between Rendezvous and Discovery version 5. Right now we run both, but it's not necessary. So ideally we would just default to Rendezvous, get peers, and if they are okay, the network is the Status Mobile is connected to the network, receives messages, and so on and so forth. We would not need to back off to Discover version 5. Otherwise, we would do that. So it's just a matter of like making a bit smarter the solution, and finally disable Discover version 5 because it uses a lot of traffic. So Rendezvous will allow us to reduce traffic even more. Okay, and please the final slide. Oh, that was the last one. Cool. So
yeah, I think so.
Cool.
So we have quite a few things coming through the chat here. Let me just see. I can't see the chat full screen. So if anybody on the call has particular questions from the chat, please ask them. Otherwise, I have some for Adam.
From the chat, you mean the chat?
In this call.
In this call. I think they're most... Yeah, please, Stefani.
Okay, then we have there's been a conversation between Goran and one of our status IAM, and I think that was okay.
Cool.
Yeah, they're all related to wallet, actually. Not peer.
No problem.
Yep.
No problem. Then for peer-to-peer wallet, for peer-to-peer, Adam, how much actual work have we done with Eduardo and Jordi from DAppNode yet? Is that still like mostly in discussion stages?
No. It's actually super close. So that was like, we had a call with them like on Monday previous week, I believe, or somewhere there. And those guys are super cool because it's pretty much already running. I mean, it's very close to be finished, let's say. So it's possible to run status node as a Whisper node. Right now, what we are working on is the running status node as a May server. So, yep, it's coming, and it seems like it's very close to be finished.
And when, I mean, you mentioned the Docker image, like when people run and install status on their DApp node, does that come with like all of the presets required for connecting to the network? So when you're running it with that like SHH flag, the POW is set right, so everything is sort of as it should be in order to propagate messages across status?
Yep. So that's the idea to just install it and be part of the production network and deliver messages that we can see when you run status node, status desktop, or status mobile. The other thing is configuration, some options that you could set and decide maybe if you want to run your private network because you want to test something, right? Or something like that. So we haven't really talked about it yet. The first goal is to allow to run status nodes that can join our public production network.
Cool. And final question on that is that, one of the big questions in general about status desktop and mail servers and encouraging people to run them is around economic incentivization and how we actually sort of achieve that. And I know that it's a problem that the DAppNode guys are facing as well. So have you spoken at all about, DAppNode as a sort of place to experiment with perhaps different kinds of incentives for, running and installing status, for instance. Have you guys thought about that at all?
No, we haven't started really talking about it, but yeah, I think that definitely it's something that we could join effort and talk about and maybe figure out a solution, because we tried to figure out that, and it turned out that would require quite a lot of work and experiments. So it would be really nice to join effort with someone, and yeah, that might be a solution for that. But yeah, after we get this running, we definitely gonna do some follow-ups and figure it out how we could work on that. So yeah, making
cool. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's really exciting to see our own forks of Geth and Whisper, and to particularly see that rendezvous stuff with the ADS experimentation. That's really critical, I think, for running light clients on our phones and getting closer to where we really want to be. So thank you so much for your work and presentation there.
Thank you.
That leads us into one final section for the day, which is security with Corey.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
I'll try and be a little quick here. I know we're running past the time, but generally, I want to start with kind of this idea of security with respect to decentralization, and that's this concept of like, what do we defend when there is no castle? If there is no centralized infrastructure, no centralized place we go, no centralized network in which we operate in, how do you do security? And that typically goes into two places. One, like this is something that Jessen alluded to earlier. The core contributors end up being the majority of the attack surface. And so it's very important that you have good personal security practices with how you operate yourself, as well as how you handle the potentially confidential materials or sensitive materials within status. So with that in mind, we're going to be doing a week-long, if not longer, kind of workshop / interactive sessions to try and boost both of those things. On the U side, we're going to have personal security audit guides, password management, personal privacy audit guides, anything that we can do to help you go through a long checklist of things you can do to check to see whether or not you're doing things properly with respect to yourself, as well as how you operate with status. Organizationally, since we are an open source software company, but still have some centralized infrastructure, I'm going to also work to then increase the things that we're doing, such as PR checklists, which I'll talk about here in a moment, an incident response team. So if something goes wrong, regardless if that's you personally, maybe you feel like your keys were compromised, your computer's compromised, you think something's doing wrong within status, doesn't matter. We need someplace that you can go to get help immediately. That includes something like a hotline where you can call, check in, do something so that you can report / get help with whatever you need to be helped with. Also, we need infrastructure monitoring. Even though we don't have a lot of infrastructure and it's deployed across a cloud, we need to make sure that that's operating the way best it is, because people who get our app need to make sure that they're getting the proper app and not some copy of it. And all of the stuff that we put out as an official status representative needs to make sure that that's not being compromised as well. So we need to make sure that we're monitoring that type of stuff, which is something I'll talk about here in a moment. If there's something that you think that should be contributed to with respect to the security week, I will hope that you can chime in on the discuss channel that brought this up. Next slide. Andy, hit the next slide, please. Thank you. So the infrastructure auditing and monitoring, the step in that direction is something that I've just recently started. We've signed a contract with a company called Threatstack. It's a 1-year contract, and what they do is they monitor all our cloud services, the OS level, user commands, things like that. So they can see in real time privilege escalation. So someone trying to use sudo to access certain materials, so people accessing certain sensitive parts of that operating system, trying to manipulate files. They don't show any of the content of those files. They only show the operation of people moving around the operating system and what users are doing. So we have agents on a good portion of all of our critical infrastructure. That's like our continuous integration pipeline, our all the pages that feed official status content, things like that. And outside of this, them just reporting that on a nice dashboard, which I can give you access to if you're or if you're inclined to see it, is they do oversight and insight services. So that means that they will also triage a lot of this stuff. They'll go through it, see what's important, see what isn't important, what looks odd, what doesn't look odd. And they'll also fine tune it to see what is normal user behavior, such as our Jenkins servers throw out a lot of messages that look potentially malevolent, but they aren't, because Jenkins has a lot of say in how things work on the operating system. So they sort through that and then escalate any potentially severe issues to us immediately so that we can take care of it. They also do insight services where they do a lot of machine learning on that said data previously that they're fine tuning to then see what potential things we could have done wrong down the road, so that they can help us mitigate those types of things too. Another thing they do is they give us a security grading, which isn't included here, which we work with their CISO and security team to then make all of our infrastructure and cloud security much, much better. So let's think of them as like an extension of the security team to help us figure out what's going on within our actual infrastructure and how secure it is. They also provide a 24/7 incident response team for all of the things said earlier, which is really nice, as well as give standard software vulnerability reports on all the things we're using on each operating system. And since we are a decentralized company in all of the ways, we aren't using any single cloud source or a cloud computing company, which means that any of the majority of the services that offer something like this or software that would provide this type of functionality doesn't exist, because we're spread across all of the cloud infrastructure services. This has been really nice for us to then keep a really good watchful eye on what's going on. And just to reiterate, we're not giving them any sensitive information about any of the files on any of the infrastructure that we have. So we don't have to worry about offloading that security to somebody else. And if they lose something, we lose something. If someone were to compromise them, there's not a lot of information that they would get, or any information that would get that could compromise us, outside of anything they could get just by doing normal stuff. Next slide, please. Another thing that's been going on in security is the various security audits across the company. We have 2 that are currently finishing up or / on the end cycle of them. One is the ENS smart contract we have with Sigma Prime. The result summary of that is 3 medium risks, 1 low risk, and 5 informationals. This is a really good result of an audit that was done really, really, really well. We're very happy with the quality of the report and the interaction between the company and us. We're currently working to fix all of the above issues. Shout out to Ricardo for working really diligently on that. And when this is done, we'll post publicly the entire report, the fixes that we've done, and our experience with Sigma Prime. The hardware wallet, the guys have been working with ZK Labs on this one. We've received our first draft of the audit last Friday. In summary, they have a few architecture suggestions, some suggestions for testing. We're discussing with them on who's going to come up with those tests. We believe it's going to be them. There's a lot more work to be done on their side with regards to what's left. Can you go back a little bit more? And so that discussion is ongoing, but it's moving in the right direction. You think there's something across the company that you'd like a security audit on, an official third-party security audit, please talk with me first so I can help negotiate that and find someone who's appropriate for the job. I want to make sure that anything that we do for an external security audit perspective is done with a firm that is appropriate for doing that type of work. And going with the same person all the time isn't necessarily the right case. So please contact me and I'll help you with that. As for the open source kind of security thing, one of the things people have been asking me is for security checklists. So people like tools and checklists to make sure that they're doing things appropriately for whatever they're doing. And that in mind, I'm going to start rolling out and working on pull request security checklists. We already have a bot that does this to give you some reminders of like, did this impact the docs? Did you change those things? I will be working to then extend this for each repo to include a security checklist associated with what that repo is for and the potential security issues around it. So that kind of changes across the different kind of repo and how it interacts with the core functionality of status. So I'm going to start implementing those. So when anyone does it, whether that be core contributor or outside contributor, I want to make sure that they have at least reminders of all of the potential things that can happen with respect to this repo and if they've thought about those. And I'm going to need your help to do that. So please contact me to help figure out what types of things are especially relevant to each particular repo for the ones that you're working on so that I can build a good checklist. And Q&A, any questions with regards to any of that stuff or other stuff that I missed?
No, I think that's, we've exceeded a little bit of our time for this town hall, but Corey, that's really, really great. And it's, look, it's an interesting problem about how to secure a castle when there isn't one. I suppose like maybe just one question from me, particularly around the ENS usernames. Do you have any sense of a timeline around like when those fixes and the suggestions that Sigma Prime made will be finished?
It looks like Ricardo has basically submitted a commit that potentially solves all of the issues. There may be maybe one or two small things that we want to work out, but I'd imagine that's going to come around over the next few days.
Cool. Thank you so much. That's pretty much everything from me. Are there any other questions from people on this call? It doesn't sound like it. And might be great.
Sorry, you broke up there, Andy.
Thanks as always for joining us. And in 2 weeks, happy people.
Thank you, Andy. Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thanks, guys. See you around.
Cheers, guys.
Thanks, bye.